Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cozy Corner. My name is Lee and this is my library. So grab a mug of something yummy and settle in for some talk of books. It is time for my September wrap-up. September actually was a very solid reading month for me. I finished quite a few big books and pushed aside many of my planned reading goals in favor of starting to reread a series that I had not anticipated rereading this month. But I have read a lot. One of the better months I've had this year actually, so that's really good. And I read a variety of things too. Yeah, I kind of dabbled in a lot. One predominant genre, but there were a few random ones sprinkled in there. Yeah, so like I said, I think this was a pretty good reading month for me, and I'm very satisfied with the amount of reading I've gotten done. And October is proving to be just as fruitful. So without further ado, let's talk about the books I read in September. So the first book that I finished in September is Pride and Prejudice, if you can see it on the spine. This is my grandmother's copy of Pride and Prejudice. It's about as old as she is. Very sun-worn, very faded, but a little bit of water damage too. But I have, yeah, always loved this copy. I took this copy with me to college. Pride and Prejudice. What do I want to say about Pride and Prejudice? I have read this book 7 times now, and that's not an exaggeration. I've actually read the thing 7 times, and I still don't like it as much as I like Sense and Sensibility. Sense and Sensibility is my favorite Austen novel. I did listen to this on audiobook. I found a free recording of it on YouTube and just listened to it while I work because I didn't want to sit and read it again. What else? There were some good things as well. I mean, it's an iconic love story. I know there's some people who have problems with that type of relationship, and I can see their point, but it is an iconic love story. You know, it paved the way for a different type of romance. I mean, I think it was one of the original enemies to lovers books. And so for that, I think it deserves some praise. I love that it is fast-paced. It does move very quickly, and it's short chapters, which with a book like this, with this type of writing, short chapters are nice because it makes you feel like you're getting something done. But things I didn't like, oh sorry, one more thing that I did like. It might just be because of Matthew Macfadyen and Colin Firth, but I do swoon a little bit over Darcy. There's something about the stoic man with a heart of gold, which, you know, is what he becomes at the end of the book, or in the movies, that just, it's yummy. Things I didn't like, again, it's because I've read it so many times, I'm really over this story. And also, I cannot stand half of the characters in this book. I mean, on the whole, Elizabeth is the only character in her family that have any sort of like appreciation for. Jane is okay, but I mean, almost every other character in here I'm just like, ugh, stop talking. I don't like them. The only character in Pride and Prejudice that I like, unironically, that's not a good one, is Collins, Mr. Collins. I think, you know, never in my life have I read such an exemplary character. To borrow his quote about boiled potatoes. It's my favorite line of the whole book. But anyway, yeah, on the whole, it's why I gave it 3 stars, by the way, 3 out of 5 stars. And for my rating system, 3 stars means it's a good book that everyone should read. I think everyone should read this at least once. Whether you like it or not, I think it's just a standard book that deserves to be read because it is good, for the majority, but it's just one that I have never particularly found very compelling, and I'm real tired of reading it. So this was part of my Book March Madness Elite 8, and I finally checked it off the list. It was the last one as part of that challenge, Little Women, I finished last month, which was also one of the last ones. So glad to be done with it. Again, I give it 3 out of 5 stars. It is a good book, but it just has never moved me. The next book I finished in September is The Dinner by Herman Koch. I will put a picture of it somewhere up on the screen. I did get this book from my library. I think overall, this book, I wasn't disappointed necessarily, I was more just unimpressed. I had read it read the summary of it because it was part of my Around the World in 325 Days Europe edition, or Europe section, and I thought it was so intriguing, and I was so excited to read it. But I think ultimately I was just sort of unimpressed with what transpired in the book. But before we get into what I didn't like, some things that I did like, I thought that it was a really unique setup and delivery of the plot over sections of a fancy dinner. So this takes place at a very fancy restaurant, and the main character is a dad and his wife, and his brother and his wife are all at this dinner discussing the fact that both of their sons have just committed a very illegal act, and so the tension cranks up a notch every time a new course is delivered. And I thought that was a really unique and intriguing way to format the plot of the book. But obviously bits and pieces are revealed about what happened in the past. But I just thought it was very interesting that was the format. And it's a great vehicle, so I enjoyed it. I also think the reveal of what the sons did was also very well done. It was a slow burn in terms of bits and pieces were revealed. The main character, Dad, knows majority of what's been happening by the time they get to this dinner, but the reveal for the reader as he recounts what happened is the slow burn part, and it worked so well. And this was not written in English. I believe it's been translated, and actually I think the movie adaptation doesn't even take place in the country where it was originally written in, which I thought was interesting, but it's been translated to English, so I don't know how much that affected the story, but the writing style was very unique. It was, like I said, there would be paragraphs where they would cut back in time, the narrator would, but it wasn't jarring necessarily. It was frantic in some spots, it was very well elocuted in some spots, and so it was just a nice balance of, this is someone mentally processing through this horrible thing that their child has done, and then dealing with the envy and awfulness that is their brother at the same time. All in the midst of this fancy restaurant, they're trying not to make a scene. Some things that I wasn't too sure about. I was not necessarily expecting it to be an unreliable narrator, which is what happens in this book. And I probably should have seen it earlier in the story, given the discrepancies between what's been told to other parents at the table and the narrator. But as I was getting further in, I was like, oh no, this is gonna be a full-on unreliable narrator situation, and either it's gonna work really well or it's gonna crash and burn, and I don't think it was well executed. I don't think it worked as an unreliable narrator. It was revealed very quickly. There were never really any moments of doubt woven through the story of, is he telling the truth or is he not? And so I think overall the intention behind him being an unreliable narrator was good, and him questioning his own behavior and how that impacts his son. But like I said, I think it would have been better delivered had it not come from out of left field. That's just my own personal opinion on that, because I know that some people really like the unreliable narrator. I haven't had a whole lot of experience with that, so I was glad to read it for the first time. And then the ending. The book was good and it was a smooth ride until the last few chapters, and then it just imploded, and I was like, I have no idea what any of that ending was supposed to be. And I looked it up and was reading reviews, and then I went and read the movie reviews, and everyone was basically saying the same thing. What in the heck happened at the end? I can't even explain it because I don't remember half of it because it was that confusing. It was almost like a complete 180 of behavior, and it got very meta all of a sudden in explaining what happened. There was no clear cutoff point of the boys are getting punished or we've decided to cover up their crime. It was like the last 3 chapters suddenly became a condensed version of 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it was just so completely different from everything else in the book. And there were a whole lot of different interpretations as to what it meant, and I never really got a clear definition. So I'm thinking that I might have to watch the movie to see whether it makes any more sense. But honestly, the ending let down the rest of the book. And so I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Again, for the most part, it was very good, and I think it's an interesting story. for all of the points that I mentioned earlier, but I was not particularly impressed with how it wrapped up, which I was bummed because I thought it was a unique thriller style. But again, personal taste, I think, more than bad writing. So I always sort of take that into account when giving the 3-star rating, that just because it wasn't for me doesn't necessarily mean it's not good and other people won't like it. So anyway, yeah, that was The Dinner. Moving on, the next book that I finished in September is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This is the last book from my Around the World in 325 Days South America section, and I finished this just last week, actually, and I don't know how I feel about any of the reading I did over the summer, to be honest, because I had a big string of books that have won Nobel Prizes, books that have won Pulitzers, Booker Prize. It's just, there's so many award-winning pieces of literature that I read over the summer that I didn't like. That I either couldn't get into, or it was a translation issue, I think, or whether it was just me and I wasn't in the mood to read it or the right headspace to read it. And it bummed me out because I read a few at the beginning of the year, particularly Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood, which was iconic, so good. And it was award-winning, and I was like, yeah, I finally found one. But then it just went downhill from there. Not that it's bad writing, but it was just like, I just am not getting it, why this book is the way it is and why people love it so much. But I did enjoy it. I keep saying that, but I did enjoy it. I think it was beautifully written. There were gorgeous images in here. You were very much present in the story. This follows the story of one family, several generations history in the fictional town of Macondo, and it is magical realism, and all of the interesting things that happen to that family and the town as life sort of spins out of control around them. I think also in this book it is a great critique of modernization and industrialization and colonialization, and progress for the sake of progress is not good, and the effect that outlying people groups, particularly white people, who come in and strip a land of its resources, or they will come build this huge economic infrastructure of a factory or a company, and then when the going gets rough, they pack up and leave, and all of these people are left without livelihoods. And yeah, the devastation that can reign on a small local town like that because of other people's greed. I think they were really unique characters, very multifaceted, I guess you would say, and I don't want to say quirky, but you know, this covers several generations of a family, and each of them are different. Everyone has their own personality and their own I really think that some of these people had past lives because they were that faceted. They had so many character points that were all wrapped up into one person. So I think that was a really brilliant delivery of all of those characters. It had a very visceral ending. It was equal parts horrific and poignant. Yeah, I think it, again, like most of these books of family history, it's just like one smooth carriage ride off into the distance. There's no real climax, but the ending was very powerful, I think, and wrapped up in a really nice way. And the one thing that I did want to say before I give my critique of magical realism is that I read the posthumous interview by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and he talked about how the style in which he wrote this book was modeled after how his grandparents used to tell stories, where they would tell the most ridiculous stuff with the straightest face. It was a monotone, stoic delivery of the fantastical. And I was like, that's really interesting, because that's exactly how this book is written. It is the most boring language, and yet conveying the most beautiful and outlandish things that you've ever read. And I think that's magical realism, if I'm honest. It's just a conversation like this. Very little emotion, talking about the weirdest stuff. And overall, I think part of the reason why I have this reaction to several of the books that I read over the summer is that I struggle with magical realism. I don't really know what it is. I just find it very hard to connect, and maybe it is the delivery. There's never an expression of emotion about the magical stuff that's happening. It's not firmly fantasy and it's not firmly real life. It's a weird mix of the two, and I don't know. Yeah, it's just something that I don't jive with very well, and I've had a few of them that I've read in the past that are the same way. Yeah, I think it's just a genre that until I find one that breaks me out of that funk, I'm just gonna go in with it being like, I'm probably not gonna enjoy how this is written. But I think overall it's a gorgeous book, and I've given it 3.5 out of 5 stars, because, again, books like this that are award-winning, it's obviously good literature and it needs to get into people's hands, and I gave it the extra half star because I think the language in there is beautiful, and I think it's a very interesting potential allegory for what happens when greed takes over. But again, it wasn't my favorite, and I feel awful saying that because, you know, these books are award-winning, but sometimes it just comes down to sometimes it just comes down to you like what you like, and that decides whether you enjoy a book or not. But moving on, I need to calm down because I can feel myself getting very anxious, excited. I made the discovery about a third of the way through September that my favorite author of all time, Eoin Colfer, had written a second series of the Artemis Fowl universe called the Fowl Twins. Artemis Fowl has 2 younger twin brothers, Miles and Beckett, who are the most adorable boys on the planet, and I didn't know that existed until I was shelving something in the library near that area where they were located, and I was like, what? I had mentally and emotionally shut myself off from Artemis Fowl for a while because of the horrendous adaptation on Disney+. It's Aragon level bad. And so I was like, I need to take a break because I can't deal with that. But anyway, I saw that series and I immediately was like, I've forgotten every reason as to why I paused in reading Artemis Fowl or doing anything Artemis Fowl related, because I was mourning the movie adaptation. And when I tell you that it obliterated any reading plans I had for the rest of September, because I immediately checked out the 2 Fowl Twins books that were out and immediately told my boss that she needed to order the 3rd one, which she did. And I was, the first one, it was so stellar. It was so good. The first one is just the Fowl Twins. It was an excellent plot delivery, exactly how the Artemis Fowl books are formatted. That casual, comedic delivery. As usual, Eoin Colfer writes incredible characters that have such personality, equal parts depth and humor. You know, it is such a good balance of humor and tension and tender moments in these stories, and I love the connection that Miles and Beckett have. I think it's so awesome and cute. They're so cute. And I didn't put the first book in a reading vlog because, one, I didn't really want to do that because I wanted that experience to be just for me, of opening a new facet of this universe that has been dormant for the last decade or so. And I got to the last 20 pages and I broke down. It wrecked me. I was crying, I was laughing, I was shrieking unintelligibly. It was just, I can't describe that feeling of this universe that you knew was over, of there's not going to be any more books, and then all of a sudden it's just like a breath of fresh air and nothing else mattered. I was like, why am I stressing about reading all of these books by the end of the year? This is what I love, and so therefore this is what I'm gonna read. And I put everything else aside and I read it, and it was just, like I said, it was a breath of fresh air. It was so good, and it was so emotional. So I didn't vlog that one, but I did give that book 4 out of 5 stars. And then I moved on to the sequel, which is the Fowl Twins Deny All Charges, and everything that I said about the first one is true for the second one, except for the tears. I held myself together for the second one. I loved that in the Fowl Twins Deny All Charges, there were new characters that were introduced, new facets of fairy history. In the first book, It's Miles and Beckett are kidnapped by a secret agency called Acronym, who want to find fairies to use for research purposes. And the main villain in that is Lord Titty Bleed 'em Dry. And then in the second one, they are still being pursued by Acronym, except this rogue band of mercenary heist dwarves kidnap them. But Lord Teddy Bleed 'em Dry is still working behind the scenes. And the third one that's coming out, I believe, is sort of the capstone of the first opening several books of that series. So that's just a brief overview. I think that I mentioned this in my reading vlog, but I think the first one is better than the second one. They're both incredible, but I think just the impact of the first one was a little better than the second one. I also rated the second Fowl Twins 4 out of 5 stars. But something people have been asking me about why I rated them only 4 out of 5 stars. It's like, you love Artemis Fowl. Why aren't these 5 out of 5 stars? And I was like, you love Artemis Fowl so much. And I was like, it's because I love Artemis Fowl so much. It's my all-time favorite series. Best books I've ever read. And like I said, with sequels, it's the same thing with spin-offs. Rarely does a spin-off hit as hard as the first series. But Artemis Fowl was the series that changed me. It changed how I thought, how I felt, how I viewed the world, how I read, how I wrote. It just changed me. And I owe so much of my love of writing and reading to that series and to Eoin Colfer, and I'm getting emotional. You're getting a glimpse of Lee, who read the first Fowl Twins book. Growing up, I had friends. I was not lonely in particular, but I was a very solitary girl. And reading those books was just, it was just an affirmation of who I was on the inside. It allowed me to be me, and I don't know how often that happens to people when they find a medium that just inspires them to be them, and it was a comfort to me when the world told me that who I was not okay, or that it made me feel like I wasn't okay, and those books were a security blanket, and I loved them so much. If I could have dinner with anyone in the world, it would be Eoin Colfer. It was my ultimate escape, and I know that sometimes that's not healthy, but the way it changed me for the better, and I am thankful for that every day. But I love that series so much, and it honestly, it doesn't really matter what he wrote. I would love it no matter what, but that series was so good, and nothing will ever be like that. But I loved them. They were excellent, and at this end of the second one, there was a pretty decent cliffhanger as to an old character from the Artemis Fowl series that's gonna be added into the storyline, and I'm well excited for it because I think this character deserves to have more written about them, so I'm really excited to read that when the third one comes out. Oh, moving right along. Because I read the Fowl Twins, and it obliterated, like I said, any other reading plans I had, I immediately started re-listening to the Artemis Fowl audiobooks that are narrated by Nathaniel Parker. I found them on Audible, and I finished the first 3 in September, so Artemis Fowl I give 5 stars to. It's so good, and I'm gonna breeze through so I don't cry again. And then the second one, which is the Arctic Incident, I gave 4 stars. It was still awesome, but again, I just have my favorites of the series. And then the Eternity Code, which is the third one, I gave another 5 stars because that's one of my favorites of the series. So I finished all of those. I am about halfway through the Opal Deception, which is the 4th one. I thought I was going to be able to finish it today, but no dice. I don't want to rush through it. I want to enjoy my time. So those are 3 other books that I finished in September, and I'm going to wipe my tears and get another drink. Okay, we've calmed down a little. So that was a great part of September, was that series. But then, the final book that I finished in September was also the end of a series, less emotional this time, but still very good. And that was the Brotherband Chronicles Return of the Temujai by John Flanagan. I have it right here. This bad boy, literally finished it last night when I'm filming this, and I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. It's the first 5 out of 5 stars book that I have read in 2021 that wasn't a reread. I have so many things to say. it was the best way to end September. I'm sad and heartbroken a little bit that this is the final book in the Brotherband Chronicles series. This follows Hal and his boys and Lydia, who is the female on their crew, as they go to fight off the Temujai who are threatening to invade Scandia once again, and all of the shenanigans they get up to, and sort of the life-threatening things that happen to them. Okay, what's that? What did I write down? Focus. It was such a solid plot. I'm sad that I think this is actually the last one. I don't think he's gonna write another one. But it was such a solid plot. I think it was well paced. Much like Artemis Fowl, Ranger's Apprentice, which is the original series, Brotherband is the spin-off. It is a touchstone for me, the Ranger's Apprentice. Again, it was one of those series that changed how I read, and actually inspired me to focus more on my fantasy writing than anything else. But the Brotherband Chronicles make me laugh. They're such jolly books, and the humor and the byplay between all of the Scandian people is just, it's so heartwarming. I don't read one of these without laughing because of how they interact with one another. They're just so good. And the boys of this Brotherband, they're such good boys. They're men now, but they have strong morals and brains. They're so smart and good backbone, and I mean, it's just what every girl wants to read, you know? And Lydia, who is iconic. She's so great, and she is the perfect feminine balance to 11 boys. Are there 11? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 boys. So the characters are so good and so lovable. This last book, and the first 3 in the original sort of 3-part trilogy at the beginning are all 5 stars to me. It's the perfect bookends for this series. The one thing that I was waiting for in this book was that there was no romance in this book. Sometimes that happens in these series. There was a pretty serious one in the Ghost Faces a few books back, but I was anticipating one in particular that didn't happen, but I'm kind of wondering if it isn't going to happen now between Lydia and one of the crewmates, Ingvar, who they're very compassionate and affectionate towards one another. Could just be that they're great friends. And the reason why I didn't cry when this series ended is because the Brotherband characters are part of the Royal Ranger series, which is the second spin-off series, featuring Maddie, who is the first girl ranger. We love a glass ceiling that is broken, and they're involved in that series now, so it's not goodbye forever for them, and there's a pretty significant chance that either Hal, who is the captain, or Stig, his first mate, might end up in a relationship with Maddie, who is the princess and also a ranger. Anyway, I did give this 5 out of 5 stars because it was such a great ending. Yeah, and with that, that's the last book that I finished in the month of September. What a roller coaster it's been. Tears, laughter, frustration, every emotion. I would love to know what you all read in September. Did you have a great reading month? I had more than I was anticipating, courtesy of audiobooks. So yeah, I would love to know what you're reading. Have you read any of the books that I finished in the month of September? Let me know, and if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel because it really does help me out, and let me know what you guys want to see. October is going to be such a good reading month. I can feel it already. So, as always, a huge thank you to the friends and family who have readily supported me along this journey. It truly means the world to me, and I can't wait to see what's on the next page. Cheers.